If you train and/or race in an environment that has a high percentage of humidity and/or has extreme air temperatures, you already know how difficult it is to avoid dehydration. In this video, I want to walk you through 4 specific things that you can implement today that will not only preserve your performance, it'll also help you offset the potential of heat exhaustion and even worse, heat stroke. Let's take a look at this. The first thing that you can do to proactively deal with heat and humidity is start monitoring your weight. Now, if you have a love-hate relationship with the scale, I'm going to ask you to change your perspective by 1 degree. The scale becomes your #1 friend when it comes to optimizing performance and being able to handle high percentages of humidity in the air. The way that we do this is have you weigh yourself in the morning with an empty bladder and then weigh yourself again before going to bed once again with an empty bladder. Ideally, you should be 3 to 5 pounds heavier. The reason why this is so incredibly important is you'll notice tomorrow that when you wake up, you have lost that same 3 to 5 pounds that you gained during the day. This is how we avoid chronic dehydration. We started today's conversation by saying heat, humidity, both of those have a negative impact on performance. Well, if you're dehydrated, you're only compounding the negative impact on your performance. So we use this as a daily regulation of making sure that you're ending your day hydrated. That way when your body goes through its recovery process through the night and you lose water, we know that you're going to wake up tomorrow. The body's had a chance to recover with the utilization of water, which is really, really important for a lot of bodily functions. You're going to wake up tomorrow more rejuvenated and you're going to wake up much fresher. Something else to keep in mind is when you become dehydrated, you have a tendency to have a suppressed appetite. Now, you're watching this video because you want to improve your performance, you want to improve your overall health. Well, if you have a suppressed appetite, which is very typical with high temperatures, high heart rate, anything that's deemed stressful by the body is going to suppress appetite. Well, here you are trying to perform optimally. You don't have sufficient amount of calories because you don't have an appetite, but your brain has a significant desire to be better. So this is where your brain will supersede, hey, I haven't eaten today, well, I want to be better, so you're disciplined and you'll get out and do the work. We want to avoid chronic dehydration. We want to avoid what's called a dehydration reaction. This is where the body reacts to chronic dehydration, and if it happens enough times in a row, the body will literally start to pivot a negative direction. It's going to adapt to survive. This is what we refer to as the hierarchy of needs. So simply weighing yourself in the morning and the evening is going to guarantee that you're properly hydrated every single day. The second thing that we want to take a look at is what we refer to as thermoregulation. Now, please don't let that be intimidating. All it means is that your body is adapting to the external temperatures and it's making a lot of internal adjustments. Think about it as an acclimatization period. When you're indoors and the air temperature is extremely comfortable, let's say 69 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and you walk outside and it's 30 degrees warmer, you have to recognize that the body is going to perceive that as stressful, and this has a negative impact on your performance. If you zoom out to 10,000 feet very quickly, you realize that the 2 things that we have to be very careful of is heat exhaustion. We have to be careful of heat stroke symptoms with the ultimate goal of avoiding a heat stroke altogether. When you are going through some big temperature swings like this, remember how we said in our #1 illustration, we talked about the idea that stress will suppress appetite. Well, when you're dealing with stress in general, look at the compounding effects of this. You go from a comfortable indoor air temperature, humidity is going to be low if you're in an air-conditioned room, it dehumidifies, then it brings the temperature down. So your body is not dealing with humidity, your body is not dealing with a high air temperature, then you walk out the door, it's 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 degrees or more warmer, immediate stress on the system. The body's got to thermoregulate internal core temperature against the external air temperature. This is why we immediately start to sweat. The exothermic process, trying to get the internal heat to the surface, is going to go through your skin in the form of sweat. Now, this is where it becomes a compound problem. When your body begins to sweat, it literally wicks away water molecules into the environment. Well, If the environment is saturated, if the relative humidity in the air is 100%, that means that the air can no longer absorb any more moisture molecules. So what you get is an insulation blanket of water on water, which drives your core body temperature up. When water meets water, this is going to drive your core body temperature up because the body is not able to wick away the internal heat. That's the exothermic process, getting internal heat dissipated to the skin and removed. We said in our first suggestion, we need to make sure that you're properly hydrated. This is where you'll notice that each one of these suggestions are going to build on each other. If you don't have sufficient amount of fluid in your system, you can't wick away heat. That creates a very, very significant problem in a short period of time. This may seem a little bit counterintuitive, but when you're getting ready to go into a hot environment, what you want to do is try to regulate the temperatures and try to get them to match one another. One of the things you can do is open the windows in a room, and then when the room temperature matches the external temperature, notice that you're sitting in an air-conditioned room, temperature 70 degrees Fahrenheit. You open up the window, the hot air comes in, the cold air goes out, and you reach a balance. You reach what we refer to as homeostasis. What you've done there is you've created a gradual increase in your core body temperature. Now, I said that incorrectly. Your core body temperature is not going to go up. It's going to get acclimated to the room temperature at a skin level. Please stick with me here because this is important, and each suggestion builds on the previous one. We're trying to avoid any stress on the body the best that we can. We're trying to create an environment that reduces stress on the body. So once the room temperature matches, if you're somebody who travels in a motorhome with our motocross community, when you get up in the morning, turn the AC off. You don't have to open the windows, just let the natural temperature of the outdoors, and then when the indoor matches the outdoors, you can go ahead and open up the window. And what you're doing is you're trying to keep this acclimatization stress to a minimum. It's very, very important that you look at that as stress. What we're trying to do at that point is get you ready to go out and perform athletically. This is where it seems more counterintuitive, as I was referring to a second ago. When you're dealing with hot, humid environments, you need to lengthen your warm-up. Now, we're making an assumption here that you're fit enough that you can do a longer warm-up, slowly bring the core temperature up, right? You're starting to produce muscle friction, creates internal heat. Temperature is going to rise a little bit. Now, the body's always going to continue to maintain its core body temperature. We're not trying to prematurely overheat it. What you're doing is you're just trying to raise the body's heart rate, internal temperature, muscle contraction. Everything is starting to fire on all 8 cylinders. Once again, what we're trying to do is keep the stress to a minimum. In a moment, we're going to talk about heat stroke and heat stroke symptoms. We're going to talk about the difference between heat fatigue and heat exhaustion. All these different things need to be understood, but look at these first 2 steps. You've got to be properly hydrated, and then we need to make the transition as stress-free as we possibly can. This leads us to number 3. This is where we want to avoid heat fatigue. We want to avoid, obviously, heat exhaustion, and we most definitely want to avoid heat stroke. The cool part about the body is it gives you all kinds of external indicators. First and foremost, you're going to notice that the skin stops sweating, right? If there's no water on your skin, it's impossible to wick away the heat. You might run into things like cotton mouth. Now, you may get cramping before you get cotton mouth. You might get cotton mouth before cramping. Everybody's a little bit different. What I want you to think about is look at the sequence, right? You stop sweating, then you get cotton mouth. If the body is starting to run out of electrolytes and/or water, you might start experiencing muscle cramping. Again, another red light. First, no sweating, cotton mouth, 2 red lights. Now all of a sudden you start to cramp. You're getting a 3rd one. When you get to this point, you're starting to literally cook your body from the inside out. So what we always say is if you get that sensation that your head is hot, you're literally cooking your brains. So what we've done is we've moved from the subject of stress related with heat. Now you start physically exercising, you start losing sweat, you start losing electrolytes. This is what compounds the heat fatigue. This is what causes the onset of heat stroke. Because you're sweating, you're losing the fluids through muscle contraction. You're losing electrolytes through muscle contraction. Well, both of those are necessary, and if either or both of those are void in the body as a system, you're definitely going to cramp. Another indicator that there's a problem going on internally. Well, if your body's not able to wick away heat, you got to recognize that the heat is now trapped inside the body. This is where we move from stress related to heat fatigue. Now it starts to become the onset of heat stroke, and that's not a good thing. I don't want that to sound like a Captain Obvious statement, but you're a determined athlete. You think, well, I can push through this. No, you can't. Unfortunately, your body is starting to shut down. It's going to start going into preservation mode. That's why it's giving you indicators like, hey, you need to stop. Cotton mouth, cramping. If you can see your arms, if you have something like a motocross jersey that sits on your arms, you can't see that your arms aren't sweating. You need to pay attention to other small details. As we continue to talk about this subject, remember you have a couple phases. You have your warm-up. You're in an air-conditioned room and you're warming up to the air temperature. Then you're physically warming up to the specificity of your sport. Now you're training extremely hard or possibly racing. This is where I want you to focus on trying to keep your core body temperature from the inside out. So start by drinking our energy fuel ice cold. Fill your ice trays up with energy fuel. So when you make your water bottle, the water does not dilute the concentration rate of carbohydrates in the energy fuel. This will help you keep from diluting it, which changes the absorption rate, which we refer to as the osmolality of your sports drink. Now that you've got cold fluids inside your body, this is where we want to be putting things like a cold cloth around your neck. Now, if you're running or you're cycling or swimming, obviously you can't put a cloth around your neck. But what we're trying to do is keep cold fluids on the artery on the side of your neck. We want to keep cold fluids on the femoral artery right next to your pubic bone. You can put cold water on your wrist here. Now again, each sport's a little bit different. If you're racing a motorcycle, you don't have the ability to just grab a water bottle and spray it on you. This is where you have to look at what you do before you get on the motorcycle. But the point being is, if you're playing a sport like a ball and stick sport where you have the chance to come off the field or the court, you have a short period of time, drink the cold fluids. Don't overdrink and get that sloshy gut, but try to cool the core body temperature down from the inside out with ice cold fluids. If you have a chance, let's say you're sitting out for a few minutes, put a cold compress on your wrist, put a cold compress around your neck, put cold compress on your groin. What you're doing, remember how we started today's conversation. We recognize that heat, we recognize that humidity both create excessive stress. We're trying to keep the core body temperature as low as we possibly can to preserve, most importantly, our health, and obviously try to get the most out of ourselves athletically. The fourth and final thing that you can do ties in quite closely to number 3, and that is during your event, try to choose gear that wicks away heat. The technology of materials has come so far in such a short period of time. In the old days, we used to say that cotton kills. If you're wearing cotton, you have to realize that cotton does not wick away heat. Cotton actually retains heat. So you've got a double-edged sword. Your core body temperature is going up. It doesn't grab the moisture and take it to the surface to wick it away. It actually traps the moisture, and then you're literally creating an insulation blanket. We're not even talking about humidity. We're talking about cotton material will cause a retention of water. So now you got your sweat that has saturated the cotton. Instead of it wicking away, it actually goes the other direction. Your skin is sweating against water. As we said earlier, you don't get rid of heat. So now your cotton material is becoming a double layer. You've got humidity in the air on the outside of the cotton's taken in the water, and the cotton's pushing back against the skin. Immediate heat fatigue, eventually heat stroke, unfortunately. So when we're looking at high quality materials, you want to look at materials that grab the moisture and are designed to literally take it to the surface of the material. The air hits it and it wicks it away. Now, in addition to wick away type material, keep the colors in mind. And I don't want to go down a bunny trail here, but there's actually some technology in materials that even if it's dark in color, it does deflect UV rays. But for the most part, unless you're spending a tremendous amount of money, anything that's dark in color is going to absorb the UV rays. A lot of people are not aware of this. If you're standing outside underneath a shade tree, the air temperature underneath the shade tree is the same as it is out in direct sunlight. What makes it feel warmer is the UV rays directly from the sun. Please don't forget that. So this is where we get into the transition we were talking about earlier. If you say you go out of your air-conditioned room, you can go underneath a shade tree, get acclimated to the temperatures, gradually move yourself into the direct sunlight. When you're doing your warm-up, do your warm-up in the shade. But let's come back to the materials, number 4 that we're talking about here. You want to make sure that there is light and color as possible to try to reflect the UV rays. You want to make sure that the material, and by the way, on the subject of UV, you've got to remember, if something has been in the sun and used extensively for more than probably, there's no exact number, you need to recognize that the material is breaking down. If you've got something on your car, rubber, any kind of rubber mount or any kind of sealant, you notice that when the car sits in the sun between the contraction and the expansion, eventually that material dries up, right? The UV rays literally tear apart the material. Well, your wick-away equipment is going to unfortunately get broken down by the UV rays, and its effectiveness is going to go away. So please be aware of that. You need to replace your UV resistant wick-away clothes, I would say on an annual basis at the very least, if not more. When we put all these elements together, you've got yourself wick-away material that's lighter in color, and you're going to be able to keep that internal core temperature normalized because you're hitting the fluids on the outside, you're wicking away the heat through sweat on the outside, and you can adjust your speed, i.e. heart rate intensity, off of a garment accordingly to the heat and the humidity to perform optimally. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you've been with me for any period of time, welcome back. We certainly appreciate all your support. These videos are a catalyst from your emails. Every day here on YouTube, we release another video answering your questions. So as always, if you happen to have a question, please do me a favor and send it to me directly. contact@coachrobb.com. We'll convert it into a video. If you are new and or if you've been following us for a long period of time, if you haven't liked, subscribed, and turned on the notifications, I'd highly encourage you to do so. It's our job, it's kind of our mission as a company to answer all of our listeners, all of our subscribers, all of our followers. We want to answer your questions. So please continue to send them in. We thank you for the tremendous support that we've gotten, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.